It began on an ordinary Thursday night. Stephen Rains, a 47-year-old radio technician in a small Pennsylvania town, was finishing his shift at a local broadcasting station. A storm brewed outside, hurling wind and rain against the thick studio windows like fists demanding entry. Stephen's fingers tapped against the console, checking frequencies before shutting everything down. But then, through the headset, something utterly wrong. Static. But not just any static. This wasn't the random hiss of signal decay. It pulsed. It breathed. A dissonant rhythm that clawed at the base of his skull. He leaned in, adjusting the frequency dial with trembling hands. A voice emerged, distant yet disturbingly intimate. "They're waking up." Stephen froze. His skin tightened. This wasn't a program. This frequency wasn't even active. Then the whisper came again, clearer this time, slicing into his spine. "He sees you." The next morning, Stephen returned early, his eyes sunken from a night without sleep. He tried to recreate the transmission, praying it was just a hallucination brought on by exhaustion. But by 9:12 a.m., it returned, louder, meaner, voices screaming over each other in shrill whispers. "Don't look outside," hissed one. "They're already here," breathed another. He recoiled from the console as if it had burned him. His breath came in short, jagged bursts. He called the station's engineer, Carl, who ran diagnostics. Nothing, no tampering. But when they reviewed the live tape, the whispers weren't there. Not a trace. Carl scoffed until he saw something flicker on the monitor. Behind Stephen, a shape, faceless, flickering like a broken frame, gone the next instant. The silence between them was louder than the static. By the end of the week, the town wasn't itself. Radios blared at odd hours, even when unplugged. Car speakers emitted ghastly howls during morning commutes. Children cried at nothing, covering their ears, whispering, "Make them stop." At the local school, Mrs. Latham, a respected teacher, barricaded herself inside a classroom. She scratched symbols into the walls, using her fingernails, sobbing. "They speak through the wires. They're inside." Stephen watched helplessly as panic spread. Rational minds snapped. Calm faces became twisted masks of dread. He recorded everything. The audio, the symbols, the names of those affected. There was a pattern, and it was closing in. The voices weren't random. They were tracking something. No, someone. And the ones they followed vanished. No screams, no evidence. Just empty homes and radios whispering into nothing. One night, Stephen arrived home to find his wife, Eliza, standing in the hallway with her head tilted sharply upward, like a puppet suspended by invisible strings. The radio in the kitchen roared with static. Her lips moved rapidly, mimicking the noise. "He's in the wires," she said, her voice layered, her own, and something beneath it, something inhuman. Stephen tore the radio from the wall and smashed it, but the sound persisted, drifting from the TV, the light bulbs, the refrigerator. He screamed Eliza's name, but she only giggled, a dry, metallic sound. That night, as he watched her trace unknown runes onto the bathroom mirror with her fingernail, he realized he was already too late. The town fell into unnatural silence. Birds disappeared. Dogs refused to bark. The wind itself seemed to avoid the streets. The hum came next. A deep, low-frequency vibration that bled into the bones. Stephen walked outside one morning and found his neighbours digging holes. Deep, perfect holes in their yards. muttering numbers over and over. 17, 41, 12. It ends at 0. Stephen barricaded himself in the station. The walls, once covered in programming notes, now held frenzied scrawlings of symbols, sound waves, and geographic overlays. He didn't sleep. He barely ate. Through hours of study, he uncovered the terrible truth. It wasn't a message. It was a living signal, sentient, feeding on human chaos, drawing energy from fear. Every broadcast, every scream only made it stronger. Carl visited one last time, face pale and lips trembling. "It's inside the current," he said. "It's no longer using us. It is us." He'd seen people dissolve into ash after answering their phones. He saw a man try to crawl into his toaster, whispering, "Get me closer to it." The electrical grid had become a nervous system, and the town, the body it now moved. Stephen activated the emergency broadcast system, knowing it could be his last act. "If you hear this," he whispered into the mic, "shut everything off. Cut your power. It's not us anymore. Don't listen to the voices. They lie." Then came the faintest tap on the studio glass behind him. He turned slowly. Nothing there. But his shadow didn't match. The town was found in eerie silence. Radios hissed on every frequency. No people, no bodies, just cold cups of coffee on kitchen tables and open doors swinging gently in the windless air. Stephen's journal was recovered, pages filled with incoherent spirals and one repeating phrase. It feeds on the scream between the static. The last broadcast, archived but never aired, was a child's voice. They're everywhere now. The tape ends with laughter, but not a child's. A voice ancient and hungry, rising from the static. Months later, the government sealed off the town, citing toxic contamination, but the static never stayed locked in. Across the country, emergency operators started receiving blank calls, just hissing and distant whispers. Tech support lines reported bizarre outages where devices seemed to respond without input. Security footage in nearby cities began glitching. In every frame, a shape. Vague, watching. Experts tried to analyze the frequency. No one could replicate it, but it spread like a virus without code. Urban legends grew. People claimed to see things inside microwaves, electrical outlets that wept, static that hummed in Morse code. 1 year later to the day, a new signal appeared on emergency bands across the country. A single phrase repeated over and over, in every known language, "It's our turn now." Hospitals reported mass cases of psychosis. Entire apartment complexes went silent overnight. The lights remained on, but no one answered the doors. In some cities, the power grid collapsed entirely. When engineers tried to trace the fault, they found something impossible. Every line, every cable led back to the Pennsylvania town, and in the dead center of it, the radio tower blinked steadily, still transmitting. It started with a siren that wasn't supposed to exist. Ben McAllister had lived in Woodmere for over a decade, a quiet suburban town 30 miles north of Chicago, the kind of place people described as sleepy. That morning, just past 4:30 a.m., he was jarred awake by a long, hollow wail, not from an ambulance or police car, but from something deeper, something mechanical and ancient. The sound came in waves, vibrating through the walls, as if the town itself was groaning in protest. Ben sat up in bed, heart pounding. His wife, Elaine, stirred beside him, her brows creased, her lips mouthing silent words in her sleep. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. "What is that?" she mumbled, reaching for her phone. No signal, just a dead black screen. Ben got up, walked to the window, and pulled the curtains slightly aside. The street was bathed in that dim orange hue of early dawn, but something felt off. The streetlights were flickering, one by one, as though the electricity was struggling to stay alive. Then the sound came again, longer, louder, with a pitch that scraped at the bones. This time, it was accompanied by a sudden sharp knock at the front door. Ben hesitated. Who the hell would be knocking this early? He crept down the stairs, every board creaking louder than it ever had before. Elaine followed, now fully awake, wrapping her robe tight around her. The knocking had turned into pounding, urgent, desperate, almost inhuman. He opened the door. A boy, maybe 17, stood there, blood streaking down his forehead, his eyes wide with a look that didn't belong on someone so young. There was something feral in them. "They're here," the boy gasped. "Don't open your doors. Don't look at the sky. Don't listen to anything for too long." Ben grabbed the boy and pulled him in. "Who? Who's here?" But the boy passed out before he could say anything more. Outside, the siren had stopped. It was replaced by silence, not calm silence, but the kind that presses against your ears. A silence so unnatural, it felt like the world was holding its breath. And the shadows outside, they were moving. The town's emergency lines were down. No radio, no TV, no internet. Ben and Elaine sat in their living room, candles casting eerie shadows along the walls. The boy, who called himself Tyler, woke up an hour later. He was trembling, flinching at even the soft creak of the house. "You don't understand," he said. "It's not a storm. It's them. Something opened. I saw it. We all did. Last night at the old quarry." Ben exchanged a look with Elaine. Everyone knew the quarry. Teenagers went there to drink, take photos, tell ghost stories. No one took the rumors seriously until now. "What did you see, Tyler?" He hesitated, then whispered. It looked like a tear in the sky, like reality had been ripped open. And something came through. Elaine covered her mouth. Ben leaned in, his voice low. "What kind of something?" "They don't move right. They don't make sense. They remember you, even if you've never seen them before. And if you look at them, really look, you feel something inside you crack." That night they heard it again. Not the siren. This time it was laughter. Faint at first, then louder. A chorus of giggles and mockery, like children playing in the attic. Only they didn't have an attic. Elaine clutched Ben's hand. The laughter grew closer. Tyler stood in the hallway unmoving, eyes wide. "They're looking for minds to bend," he muttered. "That's what they want." Ben armed himself with the only thing he could find, a rusted fireplace poker. "Stay here," he whispered to Elaine. He crept toward the sound, every step heavier than the last. When he opened the hall closet, expecting to find nothing, he saw eyes. Dozens, blinking, swirling, some human, others completely alien in design. They vanished the second his gaze met theirs, replaced by that void-like silence again. He slammed the door shut, something behind. The door giggled. Morning came, but the sun didn't rise. Instead, the sky was a stagnant grey dome, motionless and wrong. No birds, no breeze, just static in the air, and the hum of a world off balance. People began appearing in the street, walking aimlessly. Blank faces, slow dragging steps, mouths moving, but no sound escaping. Ben and Elaine watched from the window. "Are they sleepwalking?" she asked. Tyler shook his head. "No, they're dreaming. They're caught in it. The chaos got them." Ben opened the front door an inch, peering out. One of the neighbors, Mr. Dreyfus, turned to look directly at him, but his face was wrong. His smile was far too wide, his eyes unblinking, and his jaw unhinged. "Come out," Dreyfus sang. "Come see the freedom of no order." Ben shut the door, bolted it. Elaine was hyperventilating. Tyler grabbed her hand. "Don't listen to them. If you listen too long, you start to agree." They made a plan to reach Ben's brother, who lived 10 miles away and was ex-military. Maybe he knew what to do. They packed quickly. No electronics, only analog tools. Maps, knives, bottled water. Ben loaded the boy into the car, told Elaine to lock the doors until he came back. Halfway down the street, the sky shimmered, not like light, like a heat haze, but jagged, sharp-edged. Suddenly, the car veered on its own. Ben struggled with the wheel. Something was pulling it, not a hand, but a force, a will. The road cracked open ahead of him, revealing nothing. Actual nothing, blacker than space, deeper than logic. He hit the brakes and jumped out, dragging Tyler with him. They ran through backyards, over fences, avoiding the strange procession of people now chanting in tongues no human throat should manage. They made it to his brother's only to find the house empty. Signs of a struggle, scratches on the walls, not claw marks, but symbols. Etched with precision, something ancient. A single piece of paper lay on the table, scribbled in his brother's handwriting. "Don't fight the chaos, channel it." Ben was losing grip. Tyler seemed calmer now, eerily so. "What does that mean?" Ben asked. Tyler looked at him and smiled faintly. Maybe he figured it out. Figured what out? That the world already broke. We're just the last ones to feel it. Back in town, Elaine wasn't answering the door. Ben burst in to find the house full of mirrors, dozens of them. Elaine sat on the floor, staring at one, whispering something over and over. Her reflection wasn't mimicking her, it was smiling. "Elaine!" Ben shouted. She looked up, dazed, her eyes black, fully. "You didn't come back," she said, and her voice echoed too many times. As if the room were layered in dimensions, Ben lunged forward, grabbing her, but it was like trying to hold water. Her body shifted in his arms, becoming transparent, slipping away, and then she was gone. Only the mirror remained. In it, his own reflection didn't move. Ben smashed the mirror. Glass rained down like glittering snow, but the reflection was still there, now hovering mid-air, fractured and blinking. It opened its mouth. From it came not words, but a distorted version of Ben's voice, crying for help. He stumbled back, disoriented. The floor beneath him pulsed, soft like flesh. The house was no longer a house. It was a womb. Living, breathing, contracting. Tyler stood behind him, eyes glowing faintly. "It's not just this town," he whispered. "It's spreading." Ben ran, not toward anything, just away. The streets melted behind him. Houses folded like paper. The sky writhed. A shape formed in the clouds, immense, faceless and watching, as if something else had noticed him and liked it. He screamed, but the sound came out as laughter, not his own. He fell to his knees as time buckled around him. Minutes slipped forward, backward, sideways. Days blinked by in seconds. Then everything stopped, and the silence returned. The power went out at 2:47 a.m. It wasn't the flicker and back kind of outage. It was absolute, like someone had pulled the plug on the entire block. Carl Jensen noticed it not because he was awake, but because of what came after, an absence. The fan in his bedroom, usually humming like a mechanical lullaby, stopped. The stillness that followed was too heavy, too deliberate. At first, Carl thought it was just the wind, maybe a fallen tree. But as he sat up, squinting into the pitch-dark room, something gnawed at him. It was a silence that felt off. Not peaceful, but expectant, like the moment before a scream. His wife, Deborah, murmured in her sleep and turned over. He glanced at the digital clock. Dead. Even his watch had frozen. When Carl shuffled toward the window, his bare feet touched something damp on the floor. He stopped. The carpet was soaked. Rain, but there was no sound of a storm. He crouched and touched the wetness. It wasn't water. It was thicker, sticky. His pulse quickened. Drawing the curtain aside, Carl froze. The street outside didn't exist. There were no houses across the way. No lampposts, just a void, like black velvet stretched across the world. It swallowed everything beyond his yard. He leaned closer. The void blinked, not metaphorically, literally. Something blinked back at him. Carl stumbled back, heart hammering. Deborah stirred behind him. "What are you doing up?" she asked groggily. He couldn't find words. How could he explain that the sky had looked at him? The couple tried switching on flashlights. None worked. Batteries dead. Phones also dead. Not just drained, blank. Deborah's voice trembled. "Carl, what's going on?" They wrapped themselves in robes and headed for the door. Carl hesitated. The front door was slightly ajar. There were footprints inside the house. Muddy, elongated ones leading from the door to the hallway, as if someone or something had already entered. Carl's knees went weak. He hadn't heard a thing. Deborah's hand clutched his arm. "Are we being robbed?" "No one's robbing us," he muttered. "This is something else." As they followed the prints, the hallway began to stretch, impossibly long. The doors they passed multiplied. Their own house was warping. Deborah whimpered. Carl opened one door and found his childhood bedroom. He stood stunned. It was exactly as it had been in 1978. Posters, toys, the bed with a crooked leg. It was all there. Deborah stayed in the hall, staring at a door that now pulsed like it had a heartbeat. "Carl, we need to get out of here." Carl stepped in, drawn by some unseen force. He heard laughter, children, then sobbing, his own voice. Something was replaying moments he hadn't thought about in decades, but they were twisted. His mother's face was wrong, mouth too wide, eyes hollow. When he stepped back into the hall, Deborah was gone. The door she'd faced was now open, leading into an underground metro station. A digital sign above the platform read, "Next train arrives, yesterday." Carl shouted her name and ran in. The station was packed, with versions of people he knew, neighbours, co-workers, himself, all distorted, some crying, some mumbling, all staring. He caught a glimpse of Deborah stepping onto a train that screeched with a sound like grinding teeth. He followed her, shoving through the crowd. As the doors closed, Carl felt a hand grip his shoulder. ice cold and rough. He turned. A tall figure in a business suit with no face stood there. It didn't speak. It breathed. A sound like a collapsing lung. He pulled away and sprinted down the aisle. "Deborah!" She turned, and her eyes were black pits. She smiled like a stranger. "We're safer in here. Out there it's waking up." Then the lights inside the train flickered and the world turned upside down. He landed in his kitchen, but the kitchen was inside out. Appliances embedded in walls, the ceiling dripping with static. His phone rang. He answered. His own voice. "Stop looking. The more you see, the worse it gets." Carl screamed and threw the phone. He opened the fridge. Inside, a writhing mass of tangled limbs and television static moaned, "We remember you." Carl collapsed, crawling backwards. His home was no longer home. It was remembering him too well. A flickering TV screen appeared in the middle of the room, standing on nothing. Carl approached. On the screen, he saw himself, narrating his thoughts in real time. Then something else took over the screen. A woman, not Deborah. She stared straight at him. "Everything you ran from lives here now. You invited it back when you forgot." Carl began to cry. "What do you want from me?" he begged. The screen turned to static, then showed a countdown. 10, 9. The house convulsed. Walls shook. Screams poured from every outlet. Carl covered his ears. "Deborah!" he howled. Then everything stopped. He stood in his yard. Daylight. Birds chirping. A delivery truck down the street. Normal. Too normal. He ran inside. Everything was pristine. No blood. No prints. Deborah stepped out of the kitchen, coffee in hand. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." Carl nodded slowly. But in the corner of the living room, a dark eye blinked at him from the shadow, watching.